What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we have part 2 in our draft strategy series where I'll be taking a look at what strategies are best with an early, middle, and late first round pick. We did early last week, so we're on to middle this week. That's picks 5 through 8. Watch last week's video if you want a deeper dive into what assumptions I'm making for this video, but a quick summary: I'm assuming a 12-team league, half PPR scoring, starting 2 wide receivers. As you shrink the league size, quarterback, tight end, they become a little bit more important, so you want to move them up in the rankings. As you transition into full PPR or 3 starting wide receiver leagues, so 3 wide receivers plus a flex spot where you can start 4 wide receivers, wide receiver becomes more important. It becomes more viable to use RB0, especially if it's 3 starting wide receivers and it's full PPR. But again, for this video, we're assuming half PPR, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. So like I did last week, I'm going to show you 3 example drafts using 3 different strategies from 3 different picks. This week, it'll be picks 5, 7, and 8. So first thing I want to point out is that when you have a mid-first round pick, ADP is going to push you a little bit towards hero RB. If you have the number 5 pick, then it's very unlikely that a stud running back is going to fall to you at pick 20. It's a little bit too far, a little bit outside of that range where the elite guys are going. And then if you have picks 7 or 8, then it's definitely possible one of them does, but you're also in a little bit of a strange spot for running back if Eckler's off the board in round 1. I think in most half PPR formats, and honestly even in most full PPR formats, people are going to take Austin Eckler in the first 5 or 6 picks. And so your only real option at 7 or 8 is Bijan Robinson. And I think enough people, I would be honestly fine taking him there. I think enough people will hesitate in taking him that early as a rookie that I want to show you what happens when you avoid Bijan. Or you could honestly just say, look at the 5th pick overall team, replace Austin Eckler with Bijan Robinson, and then build everything else out the same way. But I'm going to show you one build with Eckler, one build if you take Travis Kelce at the 7th pick, and then another build where you take wide receiver. We're going to do Stephon Diggs at the 8th pick. So just giving you 3 different options, whether you want to go with running back, you want to go with Kelce, you want to go with the wide receiver. We're going to see how these teams are different, and then by the end, we can kind of see how they kind of converge into, or at least 2 of them, the 7 and 8 pick kind of converge into a similar build. 5th pick, I guess, is a little bit different because it doesn't have this tight end early, and we're going to see another tight end in the 8th pick. So round 2, again, 5th overall, we took Eckler. With the 7th overall team, we took Kelce. With the 8th overall team, we took Diggs. In round 2, we're in this range of picks 17 through 20. There are still some incredible players in this range, but honestly, the lean is towards stud wide receiver, a little bit over stud running back, just because that's also what is more likely. It's pretty unlikely that everyone just hammered out wide receiver, that you're sitting there kind of honestly on Underdog. When you're sitting there on Underdog, you typically do get Jonathan Taylor, Barkley, Nick Chubb. They're all kind of on the board in this range. In a redraft league, it's less likely that happen. You're going to push wide receiver a little bit more back. So the most likely outcome is that you're choosing between wide receivers in this range. And especially with our team at 8th overall, which has, the first pick in the second round, or not the first pick in round 2, but the first pick among the teams we're talking about here. It's more likely that you're going to have the option between one of Devonta Adams, Amon St. Brown, Garrett Wilson. You're probably going to be able to choose between one of those players with that 2nd pick. You probably won't have the choice between all of them, but I think one of them is available to where you could take them in the 2nd round. So for the Diggs team at the 8th overall pick, we're going to start off with Stephon Diggs and then Garrett Wilson. We're going to do a 2 wide receiver build in this one. On the Travis Kelce team, we're going to take Nick Chubb. I'm going to show you a team where maybe an elite running back does fall to you in this mid-range. You didn't start off with a running back and you're like, awesome, I can kind of use a hero RB build. I can say that Nick Chubb is going to be an incredible pick this season. He's going to definitely be worth taking his ADP. Even if he doesn't get the receptions, he's going to have plenty of touchdowns, plenty of yards, but he's an awesome pick. And so you could still build a hero RB team not taking running back in round 1, just assuming that Nick Chubb returns round 1 value. Maybe next season he's going in the middle of the first round, and then you can just build around him as your hero, having taken Kelsey in round 1. Again, with that like 7 and 8 pick, you really are just hoping one of Adams, St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, or Nick Chubb falls to you at those picks. Unfortunately, our team with 5th overall, I doubt any of them will be left. It's possible, and if one of them are there, say thank you, take the incredible value. You've got an incredible start to your draft. More likely outcome is that you're choosing between Jalen Waddle and Josh Jacobs, which is definitely a downgrade from what you can get just a little bit earlier in round 2, but that's kind of the reality of the 5th pick. At the 5th pick, you're just not going to be choosing between some of those stud running backs and wide receivers. You'll get helped out a little bit in round 3 because your round 3 pick is a little bit earlier, and you're going to avoid another drop off into the later 3rd round that the 7 and 8 pick will probably have to choose between. But yeah, it's not a great spot when you have the 5th pick. In that 2nd round, you're hoping someone falls. It's not to say we're going to take Waddle with this team. It's not to say Waddle's a bad pick. I mean, he still has incredible upside. Like, what if Tyreek Hill had a short suspension? What if Tyreek Hill missed a few weeks? Like, he has insane upside if that happens, and is still going to be a really, really good player, even with Tyreek Hill active. But again, it's a definite drop-off from the players I just mentioned. So on that team, again, we're going to start off with Austin Eckler, and then we're going to take Jalen Waddle in round 2. I would prefer not to take the 2 running backs there. I would prefer just to take the wide receiver. Fortunately, like I said, the team with 5th overall kind of gets a downgrade in round 2, but in round 3, they have that edge. It's a little bit before a tier break that I think you're more likely to get a really good player, whereas at the pick 7 and 8, even if people kind of take like off the wall plays at the end of round 2 into round 3, it usually gets caught back up with like people taking that value as you move into the 3rd round. And once you get into like the 7th, 8th pick of the 3rd round, that value typically is gone. We don't usually get a bunch of people taking like 4th and 5th rounders in the early 3rd round. So even if 1 or 2 people reach, you still usually don't get insane value at 7 or 8. So possible, but a little bit more unlikely. So we're going to take Chris Olave on the team with Eckler. So we're going to start off Austin Eckler, Jalen Waddle, and Chris Olave from number 5. I think that's a very, very strong start. Then with the Kelsey Chubb team, we're going to take Metcalf. Again, I do love Olave. I think there's a huge gap between him and Metcalf, but I don't think you're getting Olave when you have the 7th pick. He's the top-ranked wide receiver in this next tier, but I would definitely prefer, I've actually talked a little bit negatively, I guess, about Metcalf in prior videos. Basically just like saying that like it is unfortunate that like there is this tier break into Metcalf being this first player in that tier, but the reality of having, a little more later mid, I guess, 1st round pick is that you're probably going to have to choose between Metcalf and then that like first tier of running back that's like in that round 3 range. You're probably not getting Jacobs, you're not probably getting Henry, probably not getting Stevenson, and so it's like that next tier running back. I would prefer not to be the first one to take that range. I think that range is all kind of similar. So if you really needed one, I'd wait till round 4 to do that. I would just prefer take Metcalf. The other option is taking Mark Andrews, but on this team with Travis Kelce, we can't do that, right? So that is one little negative when you're in the middle of the 1st round, is you're removing one of those outs. If you had taken a wide receiver, like we'll see with the Stephon Diggs team, you leave yourself an out of, does a stud wide receiver fall to me in round 3? I go 3 wide receivers, but they're all awesome. Okay, that's a possibility. Can I go wide receiver, and then does a stud running back fall to me? And if none of those happens, well, maybe I can still get Mark Andrews. Maybe none of that happens. You get a little bit unlucky, and you just take whatever value is there. But one of those will probably happen. But when you take Kelsey, you remove the possibility that Mark Andrews can be taken at that next spot. And so you might get into a situation, like I'm showing you with this team, where it's like, well, you don't love it, but you kind of just have to take Metcalf because you can't take Mark Andrews, and maybe there's no value at running back. So this team is going to start off Kelsey, Chubb, Metcalf, because again, you want that wide receiver over the running back, especially not having one through round 2 into round 3. And you don't want to like exit round 3 without a wide receiver. And the other team's going to take Mark Andrews. So we're going to do Diggs, Garrett Wilson, and Mark Andrews as a start in the other build. So round 4, we're definitely leaning towards running back on the team that doesn't have one yet. Again, the team I just mentioned, 8th overall pick, Diggs, Garrett Wilson, Mark Andrews. We don't have a running back. It's the 4th round. We are going to start to take a hit every round that we don't take one. We can do RB0, but as I said in the beginning of the video, RB0 is typically reserved for teams that are definitely in full PPR leagues, but can start 4 wide receivers. That's where you really get that edge. Can't do that in this one, and so I would lean away from doing that. The hope would be in this 4th round that Jahmyr Gibbs has fallen to at this pick. I doubt it, but if he does, definitely take him. But I really do like Joe Mixon, and honestly, one of the only running backs in this range that I do like. And so if you are using our rankings, let's say, and you get to the spot, Gibbs is off the board, Mixon's off the board, and you're like, oh, I need a running back, but like, the next ones are like Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, ones we're not super excited about, and they're not really up there in the rankings. I wouldn't force a running back with this pick. You could still go with an elite quarterback. You could still honestly take that 3rd wide receiver if there's one you really like. So I wouldn't force it, but definitely if it's close, the lean is you don't have a running back yet. It's round 4. It's going to be a while before you get to your 5th round pick. There's really good wide receivers and quarterbacks in round 5, and so it's like you probably do want to take a running back with this one. I know Mixon's a little bit risky, at least right now, because we don't know the contract situation. I think once we get to August, we will know. So whether they cut him, whether they resolve the situation, he takes a pay cut, we'll probably know once actual drafts are happening. If you were drafting right now, I think I'd be fine spending the pick on him because I think he's just going to take less money and stay with the team. But again, if you're watching this and you got cut, well, we'd have to do a different running back at this place. So we're going to take him on the Diggs, Wilson, Andrews team. And then we're going to take Drake London on both other teams. This is a range I really, really like for wide receiver. London has been a go-to for me this season. He is incredibly talented. He's got a very locked-in target share. I really think people are underrating how good this Falcons offense can be this season. I mean, they were 15th in points per game last year, despite Mariota being awful most of the season, Drake London being a rookie, Pitts being hurt, Bijan not being on the roster yet. Like, they have a lot of upside, and London is, I think he's going to prove to be a league winner this season. I think people are viewing a huge gap between him and like Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and I think talent-wise, they're very, very similar. So it might be a small reach if you look at ADPs, but I think Drake London would be a good pick at this spot. Then in round 5, we're going to do the same thing as with last week's video. All 3 teams are going to take Justin Herbert. I love Herbert this season. I think I'm just incredibly confident he is going to have a phenomenal season. I think he could break records in the passing game. Like, he's awesome. He's going to have a great year this year. I would take him in round 5. In round 6, we need running backs. Every single one of these 3 teams only has 1 running back through 5 rounds. Again, optimally, we would want 2 running backs through 5 rounds, but that is just the reality of the situation when you have a mid-first round pick, especially if you don't take one in round 1. It's not always a super ideal spot to take a running back in round 2. There's definitely a talent drop-off in the mid-3rd round at running back. In round 3, we like quarterbacks, we like wide receivers in rounds 4 and 5. So it's like you get to all these rounds, and it's like, again, unless you took one in round 1 or 2 or you forced one in round 4, there aren't a lot of spots. So running backs just naturally happen to where they do, honestly, in either like early first round picks or maybe late first round picks. Like, you do kind of get different spots where you can get a running back with a mid first round pick. It pushes you towards hero RB. So oftentimes you do get to the 6th round and you really do need to be looking towards running back. Luckily, there are some actually very high upside options in the middle rounds that I really do like drafting. So in round 6, we're going to take Cam Akers on all 3 teams. In round 7, we're going to take David Montgomery on all 3 teams. That gives us 3 running backs. It gives us 1 quarterback, and then either 3 wide receivers or 2 wide receivers and a tight end on all 3 teams. So now we're very balanced. We have our running backs. We have some elite wide receivers. We've locked up elite quarterback. 2 of the teams have an elite tight end. 1 of the teams is just going to double dip later on. From that point on, for the rest of the draft, I'll show you each team, but you're basically just trying to balance everything out. Don't draft a billion running backs or a billion wide receivers and then just leave the other position hanging. Just kind of flip-flop the positions, even the teams out. You can go, 2 or 3 rounds in a row taking like a running back or wide receiver, but don't go like 7 rounds in a row taking one of them. Just kind of build it off evenly from there. So I'll list off the teams now. For those of you listening on Spotify, I can't see it on the screen. The team with the 5th overall pick has Justin Herbert quarterback. We've got Eckler, Akers, Montgomery, and Kamara at running back. And then we've got Waddle, Olave, London, Elijah Moore, and Flowers at wide receiver. And then we took Chigakonkwo later at tight end. This team would definitely need to take another tight end. Remember, always double dip at tight end in the later rounds, unless you have like a 4 or 5 player bench. Like if you've got at least 6 bench spots, take 2 tight ends late. It's just hard to hit in the position, so give yourself 2 chances, and then split the rest of the picks at running back and wide receiver. Pick with the 7th overall pick, or team with the 7th overall pick. Justin Herbert at quarterback, Chubb, Akers, Montgomery, Khalil Herbert at running back, Metcalf, London, Dotson, Elijah Moore, Sky Moore at wide receiver, Travis Kelce at tight end, and then no plans for a backup quarterback or tight end on that team. Just alternate running backs and wide receivers in the later rounds. And then finally, team with the 8th overall pick, Herbert at quarterback, Mixon, Akers, Montgomery, Khalil Herbert at running back, Diggs, Garrett Wilson, Dotson, Elijah Moore, Sky Moore at wide receiver, Mark Andrews at tight end. Again, no tight end late, no quarterback late. So as you can see, mid-first round picks tend to lean towards wide receiver and tight end in the early rounds. You have multiple chances to get either Travis Kelce or get Mark Andrews at their ADP. Both of them set up to have really good seasons. You're going to have opportunities to get quarterback in round 4 and round 5. And so it pushes you towards hero RB. It's just an odd spot a lot of time to take running backs. There are definitely some high upside running backs going in these early rounds. And again, if one of the awesome running backs falls to you in round 2, pounce on that value, take it, especially Nick Chubb. He's really someone that will lean towards this season. But don't panic if it's the case where like that doesn't happen. There's no value at running back, because you can build out. I think these are really strong teams. Maybe you like one over the other, but you can build out really strong teams at other like positions. And then there are some very high upside options in the middle rounds this season. I think people are a little bit scared of some of these running backs with like, just ambiguous backfields, running backs in situations we're not 100% sure on, but they have objectively a lot of upside this season. So don't get too scared if you're pushed towards hero RB. So that's a look at how I would attack a draft with a mid-first round pick, along with 3 example teams, depending on, how things go in the first few rounds. Like with last week's video, I want to reiterate that these are just general tips to follow, not like strict rules. I do think that striving for a hero RB build from a mid-first round pick is optimal, and targeting, tight end early, quarterback early, I think it's a good idea. But understand that things happen, value pops up. I know it's just not possible sometimes to do hero RB, to do different builds given your specific draft. That's why, I would just do plenty of mock drafts, figure out what happens on average, what general decisions you kind of come to. That way, when you're doing your actual draft, you'll have a general understanding of what's going to happen, how your team looks under different builds, and then always have a set of rankings you can fall back on that you trust. My rankings are updated sometimes several times per day, but they always take into account all the latest news and all the draft strategy research we've done this season. I also have the drafting app you can use that you can input exactly what positions in order that you've drafted so far in your draft. It'll tell you what position is optimal to draft next. So if you want to check any of that out, you can find that always on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. I'll be back tomorrow with probably a breakdown of Dameon Pierce versus Madison versus Dobbins. Friday to go over my biggest bust in every round, and then Saturday to see the biggest ADP changes over the last 2 weeks. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting the like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here. Thanks for watching.